K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com. K98talk.com, a leader in internet radio. So grab your seatbelts and take the ride of your life on K98talk.com.
Called the USA, and we fly our flag cause we're proud and free, we're Americans. Red, white, and blue is our way of life. Never back down from a challenge or a fight. Nature provides, God gives the rights, we're Americans. We fish the waters and we hunt the lands. We forge the steel with our own two hands. With what we've got, we do the best we can, we're Americans.
It's time now for the Conservative Curmudgeon Radio Show on K98 Talk. Now, here's Grouchy.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday nights, the nights that'll never be the same again on K98 Talk. You get Da Grouch, then you get Da Bunny, and then you get Da Wilkins, all in a row on Wednesday nights on K98. We're going to start things off a little differently tonight. I had a unique experience, and I'm going to make right as much as I can the kindness that was shown to me in this experience. I had my lawnmower in the shop being repaired, and I had borrowed a trailer from a coworker of mine who's also a friend, and there's probably about 25 to 30 miles between where my lawnmower was being worked on and home. Why? That's a whole nother story. Doesn't really matter, but this is the closest place that would work on my mower. So I went to get the mower, and I am in this small town, which is about the size of the town I live in, another small town, and I'm sitting at a red light. It turns green, and I start to accelerate, and I hear a loud bump. I look up in the rear view mirror, and the trailer is slowly drifting off in the distance and turning towards the side of the road. The receiver hitch pin snapped clean in half. And I'm sitting here with a trailer poking out half into a lane, half into an emergency lane. And luckily, it was right at the opening of a parking lot. So as I pulled in, the guy that was behind me swings around the trailer and swerves in front of me. He gets out, and he says, "Come on, I'll help you get it out of the road." So together we lifted the tongue of the trailer and pulled it out the rest of the way out of the road. And I proceeded to thank him profusely because there was a much better chance that the person behind me would have been honking his horn and cussing me like a dog. So anyway, I get to talking to this gentleman for a minute as we're getting the trailer back on the ball. And he tells me to hang on a second. He's got a pin that I can have. So he rummages through his toolbox for a few minutes, and finally he pops out with this receiver hitch pin. We put everything back in place on my truck, and the whole thing from start to finish takes about 15 minutes. Now, it turns out that this man is not just any man. He's not a celebrity. He's just a local man that's trying to do a really good thing. And in return for his kindness, I'm going to try to help him spread the word about this. So, if you are on Facebook, and I know that's an ugly word for a lot of people, but if you are on Facebook, please look up the New Vision Ranch. That's right, New Vision Ranch. This is the project that this gentleman, whose name is Barry Childress, is undertaking. And what he's looking to do is to build a ranch that will be a youth outreach project. It's a hand up, not a handout. Basically, he's looking at an ultimate goal of 75 acres. He wants to have cattle and horses. And he wants these kids, these 13 to 19-year-olds, to have the opportunity to come in and work with the animals, get life classes, get their heads screwed on straight. He wants to board and train for 4-H and FFA cattle programs. He wants to teach rodeoing to help some of these kids get scholarships if possible. Horseback riding for physically and emotionally handicapped, a safe haven for runaways, horse boarding and horse rescue, and just an all-around great guy trying to do something great in a community that could more than use it. So please, again, look up the New Vision Ranch on Facebook and drop Barry a line. Even if you can't afford to help donate to his project, drop him a line of support. Let him know you're thinking about him, and do what you can to help him where you can. He's a great guy looking to do a great thing for the future of this country. And a super nice and helpful person that really bailed me out of a big jam. Small town or not, the traffic flows to and from the beach on that road, and I was blocking it, and he helped instead of making it worse. So again, thank you to Barry, and thank you to everybody that would be willing to take a look at the Facebook page for New Vision Ranch and possibly help out, and even just spreading the word will help out tremendously for Barry. Again, thank you very much, Barry. I appreciate what you did for me. And everybody else, thank you for your patience in letting me vent on this. And yes, it is a horse ranch. That's right. So anyway, that takes care of the Grouch's personal business. Now it's time to get on to the business of the country. And we're going to be dealing with Hillary's money tonight, where it's coming from and why it should matter, and then maybe why it shouldn't matter. Who knows? But nonetheless, we're looking at Hillary's money. So we're going to go back in time to 2011, and we're going to go down to Colombia in South America. And there's a group of union organizers, and the dangers of their trade were intensifying. And when workers at the country's largest independent oil company staged a strike in 2011, the Colombian military rounded them up at gunpoint and threatened violence if they failed to disband. And this is according to different human rights organizations. Some similar intimidation tactics against the workers, say labor leaders, amounted to an everyday feature of life. For the United States, these were precisely the sorts of discomforting accounts that were supposed to be prevented in Colombia under a labor agreement that accompanied a recently signed free trade pact liberalizing the exchange of goods between our countries. From Washington to Bogota, the leaders had promoted the pact as a win for everybody, a deal that would once boost trade while strengthening the rights of embattled Colombian labor organizers. The formulation had previously drawn skepticism from many prominent Democrats, among them Hillary Clinton. Yet as union leaders and human rights activists conveyed these harrowing reports of violence to then Secretary of State Clinton in late 2011, urging her to pressure the Colombian government to protect labor organizers, she responded by doing nothing. State Department publicly praised Colombia's progress. Mr. Producer?
Sorry, I was trying to play Hillary cackling, but it didn't work very well.
Oh, okay. I have something close to that.
I bet you do.
That sounds a little like Hillary.
I figured you were going to go for the jackass effect, but okay.
I don't think I have one in this soundboard, so I need to work on that. But anyway, the State Department publicly praised Colombia's progress on human rights. And basically, by ignoring the problem, they permitted hundreds of millions of dollars in U.S. aid to flow to the same Colombian military that labor activists say helped intimidate workers. At the same time, Clinton's State Department was lauding their human rights records. Her family was forging a financial relationship with Pacific Rubiales, the sprawling Canadian petroleum company at the center of Colombia's labor strife. The Clintons were also developing commercial ties with the oil giant's founder, Canadian financier Frank Gistra, who now occupies a seat on the board of the Clinton Foundation. Isn't that cozy? The family's global philanthropic empire, the Clinton Foundation. So the details of these financial dealings remain murky, but this much is clear. After millions upon millions of dollars were pledged by the oil company to the Clinton Foundation, supplemented by millions more from Gistra himself, Secretary Clinton abruptly changed her position on the controversial U.S.-Colombia Trade Pact. Having opposed the deal as a bad one for labor rights back when she was a presidential campaign in 2008, she now promoted it, calling it strongly in the interests of both Colombia and the United States. Well, technically she didn't lie. As far as governments are concerned, it was good for both Colombia and the United States. But for the people of those two countries, I have to say that this deal kind of sucked. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Hillary was thinking, but anyway, this deal really sucked. The change of heart by Clinton and other Democratic leaders enabled congressional passage of a Colombia trade deal that experts say delivered huge benefits to foreign investors like Gistra. The Clinton Foundation, Gistra, and the State Department did not respond to International Business Times' requests for comments. Pacific Rubiales has denied that it has engaged in any violence towards labor union organizers. And as Hillary readies a national apparatus for her presidential campaign, one that will surely depend upon the support of America's labor unions, her family's relationship with Gistra and Pacific Rubiales, her reversal on the Colombia Trade Pact, and her subsequent move to bless Colombia's human rights record complicate her efforts to present herself as a champion of workers' rights. Boom, boom. So, these issues get amplified this week when the AFL-CIO cited persistent violence against Colombian union organizers in its push to block a new 12-nation trade deal that Clinton has championed. The details of her family's entanglements in Colombia echo talk that the Clintons have blurred the lines between their private business and philanthropic interests and those of the nation. Hillary Clinton's connections to Pacific Rubialis and Giestra intensify recent questions about whether big donations influenced her decisions as Secretary of State. Well, do you think? Hello? Yeah. Giestra's donations create the problem that it could be difficult for the public to have confidence in Clinton's certifications of Colombia's labor rights records were made on the merit and without bias or partiality. Public officials need to know that even feelings of gratitude are an inappropriate influence, said Kathleen Clark, a law professor at Washington University in St. Louis and a national expert on ethics in government. Somehow I'm thinking anybody that teaches at the college level and is considered an expert on something in government is generally a bullshit artist. But I'm going to buy this one just because it's a ding on Hillary, and who doesn't want to ding on Hillary when we can, right? So the Clintons' financial relationship with Giestra could undermine the public's confidence in Hillary's decisions, Clark said, particularly in a case that involves certifying the human rights records. Did I just read this? It would be one thing if the secretary certifying that Finland is complying with human rights standards, Clark said, but Colombia, a war-torn South American country, has been at the center of the relationship between the Clintons, Giestra, and Pacific Rubialis. Giestra and Bill Clinton reportedly first met in 2005 at a fundraiser for tsunami victims held at Giestra's home in Canada. They quickly became jet-setting friends, and you know what that means, my cigar aficionados. That year, as Giestra was on his way to becoming one of the Clinton Foundation's largest individual donors, an aide to Bill Clinton arranged an introduction between Giestra and then President of Colombia, Alvaro Uribe. After the meeting, Uribe moved to begin privatizing his country's state-owned oil company, Ecopetrol. Pacific Rubialis soon expanded its operations in Colombia in partnership with Ecopetrol, which was still being overseen by Uribe. Giestra was at the time developing deep ties to Pacific Rubialis, seeding the firm with capital, according to the CEO. Other ties to the company remain. CEO.ca reports that Giestra is today a co-investor with Pacific Rubialis' executive director in a separate firm called Blue Pacific that has done business with the oil company. Giestra also serves on the board of Endeavor Mining after a stint at that company's chairman. How about that? According to Endeavor documents, the conglomerate has advised and held equity stakes in Pacific Rubialis and two of Giestra's fellow Endeavor board members, including its CEO, who has donated at least $50,000 to the Clinton Foundation, simultaneously serve on the Pacific Rubialis board. Giestra is listed as the founder of Pacific Rubialis on Endeavor's website, and Toronto's Globe and Mail newspaper has called Pacific Rubialis a Giestra-connected shell company. Giestra's connections to Pacific Rubialis proved fruitful for the Clintons in 2007 when the oil giant became one of the first donors to a venture between Giestra and Bill Clinton. In a Pacific Rubialis news release quoting Giestra, the company announced that it was joining with its financial backers to give $4.4 million to the Clinton-Giestra Enterprise Partnership, or the CGEP. Yeah, I know it's stupid, but that's what they did with it. Incorporated in Canada as a charitable business, this partnership says it seeks to generate both social impact and financial returns for investors. That doesn't sound like a charitable company to me. A majority of CGEP's partners have connections to oil and mining industries in Colombia. Two partners have major business interests in Colombia's palm oil industry, which human rights groups say is part responsible for the world's second largest internal refugee population after Syria. Now, according to its website, CGEP's mission is to address market gaps in developing countries supplying or distributing chains. One of its larger projects has been to train young workers for jobs in tourism, healthcare, and port logistics. Okay, get that now. That would be tourism. That would be busboys and waitresses. Also, like room service type people and, the maids, things like that. Healthcare, that's going to be the people that take the waste out to the incinerator in hospitals and clinics. And what was the other one? Logistics. Yes, port logistics. That is carry this off the ship and put it over there. So Blue Pacific owns a port that was under construction as of 2013. That's according to World Bank documents. As Giestra continued expanding his businesses in Colombia, one potential complications for Colombian investors was the prospect of Democrats nixing the proposed U.S.-Colombia free trade agreement. During the 2008 presidential campaign, both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton declared their unequivocal opposition to the deal, with the latter saying there should be no trade deal with Colombia while violence against trade unionists continues in that country. She pledged that year to do everything I can to urge the Congress to reject the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. Yet within a year of becoming Secretary of State, Clinton visited Colombia, saying she was there to underscore President Obama's and my commitment to the free trade agreement. Obama had also changed his position on the pact. In a 2010 interview with RCN Television, Clinton declared that she and Obama were set to begin a very intensive effort to obtain the congressional votes to get the free trade agreement finally ratified. And federal lawmakers did indeed ratify that pact in October of 2011. And just weeks after that, AFL-CIO President Richard Trumka sent a letter to the Obama administration citing allegations of violence at Pacific Rubiales. In December of that same year, Clinton publicly thanked Giestra for his work when she gave the keynote address at the Giestra-backed International Crisis Group's annual In Pursuit of Peace Award dinner. Isn't that catchy? So you got a company that's using the military to violently threaten its workers and their organizers if they don't do what they want them to do, and he's having a gala called In Pursuit of Peace and handing out awards, undoubtedly in the name of peace and its pursuit. Anyway, early in 2012, CJEP was the main beneficiary of Pacific Rubiales' golf tournament in Bogota, which raised $1 million for the Clinton-Giestra venture. That's a hell of a golf tournament, thank you very much, for somebody that's played in a few. Then in April 2012, the Obama administration certified Colombia as respecting labor rights, cementing the trade pact into law. That certification came at the 2012 Summit of the Americas, where Clinton met with the Colombian Minister of Mining, Pacific Rubiales' primary regulator in Colombia. Hello, cha-ching! The agreement, Melinda St. Louis of Public Citizen says, was a boost to investors like Giestra. While it did not specifically promote oil exports, it gave investors new privileges under Colombian law. That kind of favor, they particularly enjoy major energy companies like Giestra's. He's getting the best of this now because he's getting it from both sides. The U.S.-Colombia FTA had an investment chapter that granted extreme investor rights, and they certainly go well beyond U.S. law in regard to property rights. St. Louis told the IB Times. She said the deal empowers corporations, and in particular natural resource corporations, to try and use international tribunals to override local opposition to their agenda. though Clinton has never explicitly explained her change of position on the U.S.-Colombia Trade Pact. Hey, Ed Henry, great question to ask Hillary. About time somebody started hammering on her. She acknowledged concerns about the Colombian human rights abuses and violence against labor organizers, targeted assassinations, and the atrocities of right-wing paramilitary groups in her 2014 book, Hard Choices, that all 13 people in the United States read. But, she asserted, by the time I visited Bogota in June of 2010, violence was down dramatically. Oh, pardon me, I have to chuckle for a second. Thank you, Mr. Producer. That was good. I'll share that off the show online later on Twitter. By the time I visited Bogota in 2010, the violence was down dramatically. She said she met up with her husband while he was traveling through Colombia on Clinton Foundation business, and the couple went out for dinner with friends and staff at a local steakhouse and toasted Colombia's progress. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch reported that in that same year Clinton visited Bogota, threats against unionists, mostly attributed to paramilitaries, successor groups, have increased since 2007, and that impunity in such cases is widespread. The Colombian human rights group PASO International reported that in 2011, Pacific Rubiales workers were forced off picket lines at gunpoint by members of the armed forces during a strike and only allowed to return to work when they had renounced the union. In 2012, a Colombian journalist covering protests against Pacific Rubiales died after being detained by the police. A year later, a report from two Democratic members of the Congressional Monitoring Group on Labor Rights in Colombia found murders and threats against union members and harmful subcontracting persist in Colombia, largely unabated. In an effort to blunt unions' criticism of Colombia agreement during Clinton's push for the congressional ratification, her State Department specifically touted an accompanying labor action plan that mandated that the Colombian government enforce its own labor laws and crack down on anti-union activities by employers and right-wing paramilitary forces. That deal was in addition to a separate congressional legislation making U.S. foreign and military aid to Colombia contingent on the Secretary of State certifying that the country was respecting labor and human rights. So, Hillary, you are a bald-faced, lying bitch. Union activists in Colombia say that even though they were disappointed by the passage of the trade agreement, they hoped that Clinton's State Department would hold Colombia to the promises it made in their part of the Labor Action Plan and consequently end the alleged anti-union hostilities at Pacific Rubiales. Now, Trumka's letter to the Obama administration about the reports of the union-sympathizing Pacific Rubiales workers facing violence specifically asked the administration to take action under the Labor Action Plan. That call was echoed by congressional lawmakers in a 2012 letter to the Colombian Minister of Labor, copied to Clinton, detailing how a strike at Pacific Rubiales was broken with the help of Colombian military, and how Pacific Rubiales engages in mass firings of workers sympathetic to union labor organizing. The United Steelworkers Union and nonprofit Washington office of the Latin America Workers Association also repeatedly contacted the State Department in 2011 and 12, asking Clinton to use her clout under the action plan and her power to withhold certification for Colombian military aid as a way to bring pressure on Pacific Rubiales. In a letter to Clinton, Steelworkers President Leo Gerard asked the secretary to, quote, take all possible measures to ensure that the Colombian government ensures the safety and well-being of the threatened USO unionists at Gistra's company. USO is the abbreviation for the Petroleum Workers Union, formerly known as La Unión Sindical Obrera de la Industria de Petróleo. Yeah, you got that right. But an IB Times review of the public State Department document shows that As the Gistra-Clinton Foundation relationship deepened, Hillary Clinton and the State Department never criticized or took any action against the Colombian government for the violations of labor rights at Pacific Rubiales. Instead, Clinton's State Department issued certifications in 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012, declaring that Colombia has been complying with the human rights standards that were required under federal law for continued U.S. military aid to the country. The Colombian government continued to make progress on improving respect for human rights, both within the armed forces and in Colombia at large, the State Department declared in 2012, despite all the allegations to the contrary and of collusion between the Colombian military and Pacific Rubiales to intimidate workers. Pacific Rubiales and its international financial partners had committed $4.4 million to the Clinton Foundation's initiative with Gistra, and Gistra had pledged to donate more than $100 million to the joint venture. The State Department's 2012 declaration, published just a few months after Bill Clinton golfed with Pacific Rubiales' president at the company's golf tournament, also asserted that the Colombian government generally continued to respect and recognize the important role of human rights defenders. Some of those human rights watchdog groups reject that assertion. Since 2011, WOLA has continuously informed the U.S. Congress and State Department and Department of Labor and United States Trade Representative of grave labor violations committed against the USO labor union in the camps of Pacific Rubiales. And Jimena Sanchez, a program officer at WOLA, despite the existence of U.S.-Colombia Labor Action Plan, our concerns have not been addressed. Pacific Rubiales continues to violate the labor rights of its workers, and it impedes independent union affiliation. Colombian and U.S. authorities are doing little, if nothing, to stop it. Now, for their part, Pacific Rubiales is, of course, denying the charges, and it did so in the past, and it's doing so again in the future as they have a press conference scheduled to address this topic. Pacific Rubiales says that they are a company that fully respects the rights of its workers and demands from the companies that provide services to it to also do so, both in Colombia as well as in all of the countries in which it operates. So says Peter Volk, General Counsel of Pacific Rubiales. In 2013, the Colombian Ministry of Labor absolved Pacific of all charges, so the government whose military Pacific Rubiales was borrowing has absolved Pacific Rubiales of doing anything wrong. How cozy. It's very important to note that not one of Pacific's employees has been or is affiliated with the USO in Colombia. Workers can affiliate to any union they wish on an individual basis, and for this reason, the USO is not a legitimate representative of the company's workers. Well, would that be because there are paramilitary groups that are actually soldiers in uniforms that aren't military uniforms that are pointing guns at these people saying, you can't join this union or we're going to kill you? Volk declined to tell IB Times the total amount of Pacific Rubiales contributed to the Clinton Foundation or to the CJEP. Nevertheless, labor organizers say that the lack of intervention by Clinton's State Department has allowed violations of labor rights at Pacific Rubiales to continue. They also argue that Clinton's certification of Colombia's human rights record led to the delivery of more resources to a Colombian military that has been critical to Pacific Rubiales' business prospects in the areas where Pacific Rubiales extracts oil. Around 80% of governmental security work is devoted to protecting oil pipelines and oil industry assets, according to Neil Martin, the Colombia-based executive director of PASO International. He says, we have seen no evidence of any real intention on the part of the Colombian or American authorities to address attacks against workers or enforce new regulations. Nothing they have done has had an impact on the ground. Now, we're going to break for a commercial break. I'm sorry I ran long, Mr. Producer, but I wanted to finish this story up. When we come back, we're going to do another tie-in with Hillary's money. Different story, but same general umbrella. This is all about Hillary's money, and when we come back, we're going to hit it some more. And you should be concerned about this. If you're not, we'll get you there. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Oh, but ain't that America? For you and me, ain't that America? Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home of the free, yeah.
If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
The feeling most people get when they hear a Barack Obama speech, I felt this thrill going up my leg. I mean, I don't have that too often.
Steady.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. Ricky Robinson, host of America Off the Rails, will tackle the important issues facing America today as he tries to keep America from coming off the track. Get ready to hear the truth every Monday through Friday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, and on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Eastern and 11 Central here on K98Talk.com and the Spark Radio Network.
Welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy.
We will never fully understand what we've asked of our military service members or their families, asking them to put themselves in harm's way, to endure it all. But we do understand that it's our turn, our duty, to keep them secure for the rest of their lives. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs help our most severely ill or injured veterans live independently, at no cost, for life, so that they might stand at ease. Join us at findwwp.org.
Okay.
Oh, but ain't that America? For you and me, ain't that America? Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home of the free, yeah.
All right, welcome back. We got a buttload of stuff to cover tonight. Okay, so we're going to press on with Hillary's money here. The Clintons, hell, let's just be straight about it. The Clintons have got away with a lot of shit in their lifelong careers of pursuing power, pursuing wealth, and monarchical adoration from humans, subhumans. They're subjects, as they like to look at us. Bill Clinton's time as Arkansas governor alone is a virtual saga of let me get this right. I'll back up a second. Bill Clinton's time as Arkansas governor alone is a virtual saga of systemic political corruption and utterly licentious, if not debased, personal conduct, of which philandering and drug binging, cocaine to be clear, are probably the most scrupulous of Bubba's various and sundry wild activities. Hillary has spent a lifetime riding the only thing on Bill she'll probably ever ride, and that's his coattails. She parlayed her first lady notoriety into a U.S. Senate seat and wasted no time seeking the presidency. Now, before Bill's successor had even passed go on the way to a much-deserved ignominy back in Texas, after a bright, clean, articulate African-American junior senator scuttled Hillary's dreams, she settled for Secretary of State and again wasted no time turning the position into yet another, basically just a cash cow to be milked for all it's worth for Hillary and Bill and basically Clinton Incorporated. Most troubling is the avalanche of foreign governments' cash pouring into the Clinton coffers through their front, the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. And foreign governments who are prohibited from contributing to any U.S. political campaign, even Hillary's, are tendering their bribes to the Clinton machine in advance of Hillary's declaration that she was going to run. So among those chipping in millions upon millions of dollars, this is great, are Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, UAE, Argentina, and Colombia. As Aristotle Onassis once said, a bribe is a bet. And it would seem lots of foreign governments with manifold interests in U.S. policy in the future are, they're sure betting heavy on the Clintons. We've already seen the insidious influence of Saudi money in the U.S. policy, where massive infusions of Saudi cash into, for example, the Bush presidential libraries and the Carlyle Group, a Bush-sponsored investment firm, guaranteed that a portion of the 9/11 Commission report detailing the Saudi government's role in the terrorist attacks would remain inexplicably classified. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that by and large, George Bush was a good president. But he did do some things wrong. And I wouldn't be me if I didn't call him out on it, because that's exactly what I do. I don't care what party you're in. If you're doing it wrong, you get called out. End of story. But more than half of the Clinton Foundation contributions, over $5 million, came from foreign governments. More than 1/3 of the contributions, over $1 million, came from the same source. One wonders how much U.S. foreign aid flowing into some of these countries has ended up in the Clintons' political war chest under the guise of philanthropy. Progressive Democrats whining about income inequality and the power of Wall Street cash should be just as troubled by the massive infusion of influence purchasing millions to Madam Clinton et al. By such unquestionably public-minded corporate citizens as Goldman Sachs, ExxonMobil, Bank of America, Chevron, Citigroup, and Deutsche Bank. To date, the Clinton Foundation's donors have footed the bill for the Clintons' lavish travel and lodging around the world to the tune of $70 million. Hillary refuses to fly on any aircraft less spacious than a Gulfstream or a G5 and demands 5-star hotel accommodations, always the presidential suite, whenever she has her routine stay. Does this sound like charity? I don't think so. What about philanthropy? Not to me. But the Clintons' giant slush fund isn't merely a Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea affair. Over 250 employees keep the Clinton Foundation rolling along at a cost of over $220 million in salaries and benefits, more than all the total charitable grants for the foundation's entire lifetime. You get that? They spend more in salaries and benefits annually than the foundation has given out in charity since its existence began. Rather than a bustling epicenter of good works, the Clinton Foundation is, in fact, a Hillary presidential campaign in waiting, a holding company filled with Clinton apparatuses advancing the Clintons' next big grab for power. In the category of most disappointing contributions is the $1 million pledge to the Clinton machine from Chris Ruddy, the founder of Newsmax. Incredibly, Ruddy, who chronicled the Clintons' early crimes for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and who wrote the definitive book on the mysterious death of Clinton lawyer Vince Foster, now says Hillary would be a great president. Friends, whether you're listening tonight as just a listener, or whether you're one of my friends that has and does a show online, you need to be very skeptical of what we're scooping up from Newsmax these days. Ruddy went so far as to pen a piece for the Clinton Foundation website praising the Clintons' purported contributions to health care for the poor in Mozambique. Does anyone really buy that my friend Chris Ruddy is interested in Mozambique's healthcare system? When Newsmax is in bed with the Clintons, there's more than something just rotten in Denmark, okay? Buried among the enormous foreign government and Wall Street donations to the Clintons is a $25,000 payment from a hedge fund billionaire and convicted pedophile, friend of Bill, Jeffrey Epstein. The former president visited Epstein's hedonistic retreat in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where underage teens were allegedly exploited to indulge the most debased sexual urges of Epstein and his VIP sex cohorts. At least 17 times, Bubba accompanied the predatory billionaire on his luxurious private jet, complete with underage female consorts available for use on the giant elevated circular bed installed on the craft. When New York Governor Eliot Spitzer received a donation from Epstein, Spitzer promptly and wisely returned the money. Look, if Eliot Spitzer can figure it the fuck out, why can't anybody else? Okay, Spitzer, who had his own share of bizarre sex-related scandals, saw the political, if not moral and ethical problems with taking money from this child-molesting bastard. When will the Clintons follow Spitzer's lead and return the dirty money? I'm saying never, because they've probably already spent it and taken more in. People, this is just another tie-in to Hillary's money and why we should be concerned about where it's coming from. Who the hell is she going to owe anything to when it comes time, if she gets elected, God help us all? I'm predicting that we're going to learn in future disclosures that the Hillary Clinton campaign today is functionally bankrupt. I'm predicting that we will also learn that she has loaned her campaign more money than has yet been disclosed. And with the latest revelation of Clinton's friends and close supporters creating an independent campaign fund, which will ultimately be found to have violated campaign finance laws, we now see the union of dirty tactics, dirty money, and desperation. And let's just call it what it is. It is a Clinton slush fund run for the purpose of attempting to saturate the airwaves with negative attacks that a near-bankrupt campaign can no longer afford to fund itself. More directly, Hillary Clinton keeps escalating her desperate demolition attacks. People like me and others like me have no choice but to respond bluntly and directly because of the damage she's doing. And not only is she damaging herself and trying to damage Republican counterparts, she's doing damage to the Democratic Party and her own future and doesn't even realize it. Hillary Clinton, as CEO, has been a disaster who has mismanaged more than $100 million, mismanaged what one calls her message, mismanaged political strategy, and mismanaged political tactics. When voters reject her tactics and message, she is reduced to trying to overturn the verdict of voters. And because her campaign money has been mismanaged, her friends have to create an independent slush fund using dirty money to finance dirty attacks. It's wrong enough for a candidate who has so failed to excite the voters to be reduced to nothing more than a negative attack machine against a candidate who lifts voters through true leadership. Now the dirty tactics must be financed through dirty money. And it is a slush fund, and I will call it a slush fund. And I predict that eventually the law will call a violation of campaign finance laws and deem it a slush fund. Hillary Clinton has learned nothing from the failures of her early campaign. This effort is doomed. This campaign will soon be over. A slush fund of independent money to dump negative sludge on the airwaves will be seen by political historians as the last gasp of a sad campaign that began as a coronation and will end as a laughingstock. But on the other side of it, she also has an endorsement from George Bush. And she's rounded up about all the big names and money bags in Washington politics. The president predicts that she's going to get the Democratic nomination, and everything seems to be going her way. Never has the adjective golden found a more opposite noun to modify than Ms. Clinton. The woman who always had an affinity for gold. You can trace her appetite for bling back to her Arkansas days when she was a partner at the Rose Law Firm. Questions arose about her billing clients, which have not been satisfactorily answered, nor have the suspicions about her picking up that quick 100 grand in the commodities market been allayed. The commodities market is where they bet on the price of things like oil and pork belly futures, and amateur investors get swindled. Oh, but not Hillary. She was such a great amateur that she made 100 grand in less than a year. Yeah. Hillary escaped political damage from accepting campaign contributions from Norman Sue, the shadowy businessman who has been accused of bilking investors of $60 million in addition to running afoul of the election laws. And then there's Pamela Leighton. According to the Wall Street Journal, when Hillary Rodham Clinton held an intimate fundraiser at her Washington home in late March, Leighton donated $4,600, the maximum allowed by law, to Miss Clinton's presidential campaign. But then 37-year-old Miss Leighton says she and her husband were reimbursed by her husband's boss for the donations. It wasn't personal money. It was all corporate money. Mrs. Leighton said outside her home here, "I don't even like Hillary. I'm a Republican," she said. The boss is William Danielchek, founder of a Washington area private equity firm and major fundraising bundler for Mrs. Clinton. Mrs. Leighton's gift was one of more than a dozen donations that night from people with the Republican ties or no history of political giving. Mr. Danielchek and his family, employees and friends donated a total of $120,000 to Mrs. Clinton in the days around the fundraiser. If Danielchek did what the article alleges, he could go to jail. Reimbursing your employees for political contributions made in their names with your money is against the law. Now, whether Hillary's connection to Danielchek will eventually bite her is anybody's guess. But Lord knows that's about the only thing that's going to bite her, because Bill ain't going to do it. Right, Bill? Hey, that's right, man. It's believed in big money circles where Hillary lives that the practice is common, although done with more subterfuge than in Leighton's case. Both of the Clintons seem to have gone money crazy. Bill is out loose on the world, taking enormous amounts of money from anybody who will pay him to appear anywhere and bragging about it. With a pension of $186,000 a year plus innumerable other perks, another ex-president might rein in the itchy palm urge, but Bill is not known as a self-control kind of guy. Isn't that right, Monica? Whether he is also acting as a bagman for his wife is something for future grand juries to investigate. But Joe Trippi, who devised Howard Dean's finance in his campaign how many years back has that been? Anyway, he's weighed in on the ethics of Hillary's money raising. Trippi, presently working for John Edwards, ripped into Hillary for hosting a fundraiser in D.C. for a select group of lobbyists with an interest in Homeland Security. Tickets for that fundraiser were $1,000 a ticket and $25,000 per bundler. And for that money, you could get more than a meal. You got to attend a 1-hour breakout session in 4 different areas of Homeland Security that will include House committee chairs and members of Congress who sit on the very committees that will be voting on Homeland Security legislation. No one in the Clinton campaign, including the candidate, found anything wrong with holding this fundraiser. This is just an indication of how bad things have gotten in Washington, because there isn't an American outside of Washington who would not be sickened by this. Trippi may have underestimated American indifference to graft and corruption, but he is right on the essentials. Much good it will do for Hillary's fondness for the long green has not hurt her, at least so far. Besides, in politics, as the adage goes, there's no such thing as dirty money, right? Now, folks, I don't know about you, but just that alone is enough to piss me off to no end about Hillary raising money. And and really, because of who's in charge of D.C. right now, I mean, you know, other than if a senator wants to stand up and do his job and do what's right, he could probably make some waves and cause some problems for Hillary. But you have Obama in the White House, who's all but assured Hillary of the nomination. You have Holder, still the Attorney General for the United States until Loretta Lynch takes office. Either way, there won't be any kind of charges raised against Hillary or Bill or anybody else for that matter while that machine is in place. So really, other than people being wise to Hillary and using their damn heads and doing the right thing, she's going to get away with this. And it's bullshit. And she shouldn't be getting away with it. So, do the right thing. Spread the word around. This is all fact, folks. These are all facts that I've been going over. None of this is subject to ambiguity or interpretation. This is all hardcore, verifiable facts. And if you need to know where I got them from, contact me on Twitter. So, we're going to press on now. We all remember the minor uproar over net neutrality. So, not long after FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler swore that the FCC takeover of the internet wouldn't result in new taxes or fees, it now appears likely that new taxes will show up on the internet bills for Americans in the near future. In a speech a few weeks before the FCC voted to approve its net neutrality rules, Chairman Wheeler promised there would be, quote, no tariffs and no new taxes. Later that month, FCC spokeswoman Kim Hart promised that the new regulatory scheme, quote, does not raise taxes or fees, period, end quote. If that sounds suspiciously like if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, or if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, there's a good reason. In mid-March, Wheeler told a House panel that he couldn't, in fact, rule out a new internet fee to help pay for the government's Universal Service Fund. by shoving the internet into the agency's Title II regulatory scheme, which was set up 80 years ago to regulate the telephone monopoly. Wheeler made it possible to do this. He said a special board representing federal and state governments was weighing whether to impose that tax. Right now, the USF is paid for by a tax added to long-distance bills. How they resolve things in the future, I do not know, he told the House committee. Does anybody in their right freaking mind believe that state and federal governments will say no to brand new revenue now that they can just tap it at will? The Los Angeles Times, which is a liberal rag, doesn't even seem to think they're going to pass it up. An article published last Thursday leads with, quote, recently adopted net neutrality regulations soon could make your monthly internet bill more complicated and more expensive. It quotes Hal Singer of the Centrist Progressive Policy Institute, who figures the USF fee and various other charges that state and local governments are likely to add to internet bills will cost consumers approximately $11 billion, that's with a big friggin' billion a year. Now, Wheeler has suggested that any new federal internet fee could be offset by a lower charge on phone bills. Well, what if you don't have a home phone, Mr. Wheeler? So that it would be a wash to consumers, he says. Yeah, right. Just last December, Wheeler authorized a $1.5 billion boost in the USF budget so he could spend more on subsidies for school and library broadband services on top of the 47% boost in the fund's budget since 2004. Now, I only got one thing to tell you on this, folks. Welcome to the brave new world of ObamaNet. You got Obamacare, now we got ObamaNet, and all we need now is the Obama cesspool to drown in, because we're going that way. Folks, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to tell Mr. Producer to shove his commercial break, and we're going to give a big shout out to some sponsors here real quick live on the air. Rolling on the Floor, laughingmybuttoff.com and the Wounded Warrior Project. Both great places to take your computer to and visit. I don't know exactly how to get through the day without cutting up, and Rolling on the Floor, Laughing My Butt Off is a great place to go to help you cut up and have a little bit of fun. Everybody knows about Wounded Warrior Project, doing great things for veterans around our country. God bless them, because we need more people like that, more organizations like that, and I know a few other organizations like that, and I'm going to be working to bring them into K98 as well. But thank both of you, Rolling on the Floor, Laughing My Butt Off, and Wounded Warrior Project for being with us here at K98. We hope everybody patronizes you and supports you as much as possible, and the efforts that you're putting forth for us. Thank you for what you do. So, there goes the commercial break, Mr. Producer. Now we're going to turn back to international news. And we have thousands of families fleeing Iraq's western city of Ramadi. The checkpoints are choked, leading to Baghdad after the Islamic State advanced and spread panic and left security forces clinging to control. A column of traffic, several vehicles wide, snaked for miles at a checkpoint in Sadr al-Yusufiyah on the edge of Baghdad province, as minibuses, cars, and trucks picked up families who crossed by foot carrying their possessions in bags and wheelbarrows. Suhaib al-Rawi, the governor of Anbar province, of which Ramadi is the capital, described it as a human disaster on the scale the city has never witnessed. U.S. and Iraqi officials have warned that the city is at risk of falling to the Islamic State despite 7 months of airstrikes by U.S. planes in Anbar. Such a loss would be a serious blow to the Iraqi government, which recently announced a military campaign for the province after retaking the militant stronghold of Tikrit, and to the international effort to push back the militant group, whose gains in Ramadi have demonstrated an ability to create chaos even while under pressure. Now let's just stop right here. This story goes on, but we need to highlight on some things. If you notice, all out of the blue, just think about it. Nobody in the Obama administration is talking about what we're doing in the Middle East anymore. They're not talking about our airstrikes anymore. They're not talking about how we're decimating ISIS anymore. And why not? Well, because the fact of the matter is the world knows that Obama is afraid to do what needs to be done. He won't do it. So, the resilience was further, wait a minute, am I on the right paragraph? Yes, I am. The resilience was further underscored in the Kurdish city of Erbil on Friday, where the Islamic State was suspected of carrying out a car bombing near the U.S. consulate. Faced with the expanding crisis on his return Friday from Washington, Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi ordered immediate reinforcements to Ramadi amid claims that some Iraqi security forces had already withdrawn. Rawi said the situation is critical right now, and it's basically teetering in Ramadi. Such a large wave of displacement has never happened in the history of this city. Rad al-Dalaki, head of the Iraqi Parliament's Committee for the Internally Displaced, said that 10,000 people had crossed into Baghdad province, but that about 20,000 more remain stranded at the checkpoint because of a guarantor system, which requires fleeing families to have someone vouch for them. What if they don't have anybody? And what do you do with them? You leave them in the middle of the desert? Many arriving Friday in Sadr al-Yusufiyah had spent days traveling and said that few civilians had remained behind. Some were police officers who said they left their positions after other security forces retreated and their ammunition had run low. How can you fight with only 20 bullets? Said a 47-year-old police officer, who added that he had left the Malab neighborhood of Ramadi 3 days earlier with 18 members of his extended family. Like others interviewed, he spoke on the condition of anonymity because he had abandoned his post. He said the army had also withdrawn, a claim that couldn't be immediately verified, but we're working on that too. Wow, another police officer says that Daesh has M16s and M4s, and we only have Kalashnikovs, using the Arabic acronym for the Islamic State, Daesh. In case you don't know, that ISIS takes that as kind of an insult, so never miss an opportunity to call them Daesh. That's D-A-E-S-H. He said he fled his home in Ramadi's Sufaya neighborhood with his wife and 1-year-old child, and he doesn't think he's ever going to see his home again. Rawi said there had been realignments of forces, but not retreats, and that there were assurances from U.S.-led coalition that airstrikes would increase. Still, he said, support has been sorely lacking. More than 4,000 families have fled Anbar in recent days as ISIS militants threaten to overrun Ramadi, the provincial capital of the Anbar province. We don't know if it's neglect or a lack of capacity, he said. That was Brigadier General Tashin Ibrahim. Said we don't know if it's neglect or a lack of capacity. A spokesman for Iraq's Ministry of Defense said reinforcements and counterterrorism units had been deployed. Our troops are preparing themselves to attack, he said. Discussions were underway as to whether to also send what are known as popular mobilization forces, which include Shiite militias, but there was not yet an agreement, he said. The question of sending the largely Shiite paramilitary forces has been contentious in Anbar, a predominantly Sunni province. But as the security situation has deteriorated, a growing number I lost my place. Sorry, folks. Give me just a second here. The question of sending the largely Shiite paramilitary forces has been contentious because it's a predominantly Sunni province. But as the situation is deteriorating, a growing number of local tribal leaders and officials have said they need all the help they can get. In a sermon Friday, Iraqi's type Shiite cleric, Grand Ayatollah Ali Sistani, said, quote, all sons of Iraq should help the fight, a comment viewed as an endorsement of the militias playing a role. At a Pentagon briefing last Thursday, General Martin Dempsey, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, played down the importance of Ramadi, saying that it is not symbolic in any way and that Baiji, a key location for Iraq's oil infrastructure, is a more strategic target. It sounds like General Dempsey is just basically giving Ramadi up. But Iraqi military officials have said that securing Anbar province, much of which is controlled by the Islamic State, is an essential step before any advance on Mosul, the group's base of power in Iraq. That view was echoed by the part-time coherent Senator John McCain, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, who called Dempsey's remarks a gross mischaracterization. The fall of Ramadi would be seen by Iraqi Sunnis as a failure of the Baghdad government to protect them and could deal a major blow to political reconciliation efforts that are essential to defeating ISIS, McCain said. Using another, who cares, blah, blah, blah. Go figure. He was joined by his conjoined twin, Lindsey Graham, by saying, yet apparently the current U.S. strategy is to defend an oil refinery in Beiji, but abandon the capital of pivotal Anbar province to ISIS. But even if Iraqi security forces can shift the momentum in their favor, the setbacks in Ramadi have compounded Iraq's humanitarian misery, with the United Nations reporting that at least 4,250 families have fled the city in recent days. Saeed Hamid, 40, said he left as Islamic State militants began to enter his neighborhood this week. Said, we left on foot through the farms. They were terrified, he added, gesturing to his 3 young nieces and nephews. Before reaching Sadr al-Yusufiyah, fleeing families are forced to leave their cars in Anbar province before crossing a bridge into Baghdad province on foot, a security measure that authorities said was intended to prevent car bomb attacks. Now, back to Dalaki, who said that these security measures were necessary, but that his committee has requested the guarantor system be dropped to ease the movement of families seeking to leave. Sunni tribal sheiks who remain in Ramadi say they have received little support for their fighters, despite promises of arms from the central government. The city has been fending off ISIS attacks for more than a year after being overrun for the first time in January 2014. At that time, before ISIS had built its brutal reputation, fewer people fled and fought. Now things are different. People are practically dying of fear, said Omar Alwani, a tribal sheikh who says he has about 500 fighters in Ramadi. Half of the army has retreated. It's only really the counterterrorism units now. Now, what good are we doing flying 6 and 7 missions a day if this shit's going on over there? This is ridiculous. Now, there's also a sheik. What's his name? Hamid? No. Yeah. Some sheiks say the government is still weak, but help. But it isn't true. And he said Hamid said we were sold out by our sheiks. They never found a solution for us. They just left, and no one thought about the families. So now we have another humanitarian crisis caused by ISIS in Iraq, a country that doesn't really want the U.S. there. What it really wants is what Obama's dying to give them is military aid and military equipment that would one day in turn be used against our interests. So we've got Iraq in turmoil with ISIS, making gains on Ramadi and Anbar. And, supposedly there's some help from Iran to fight this. But we're gonna shift gears a little bit and cross the border over into Iran here in a second to discuss the nuke deal. But it's true. There are good and decent people that live in the country of Iraq that just want to be left alone and live in peace. They don't want to force themselves on us, and they don't want us forcing ourselves on them. And unfortunately, that group of people in Iraq is the true minority because everybody else is fighting for power. So, sad as it is what it is. And this is why the Obama administration is not talking about the Middle East as much as possible now. They want to ignore the Middle East because they still consider Yemen a success, and anybody stupid enough to think that way, they need to just be sat in the corner and pork chop tied around their neck so the dog will come play with their stupid ass. All right, so in Iran, apparently international nuclear inspectors will be barred from all Iranian military sites under any deal with world powers. This is from a senior commander in the Revolutionary Guard. General Hussein Salami, the Guard's deputy leader, told Iranian state television that following foreign inspection of military sites is tantamount to selling out, raising the stakes as talks between Iran and the six-nation group are prepared to resume today. Look, in Vienna. He says, quote, "We will respond with hot lead bullets to those who speak of it." Wow. Even just speak of it. Says Iran will not become a paradise for spies. We will not roll out the red carpet for the enemy. Salami said, his name is Salami. Yeah. Following foreign inspectors to visit a military base would amount to occupation and expose military and defense secrets. It means humiliating a nation, Salami added. They will not even be permitted to inspect the most normal military site in their dreams. But such inspections have happened before. In 2005, Iran touted or allowed inspectors from the United Nations nuclear watchdog to visit its Parchin military site as a confidence-building measure. but denied further visits fearing espionage. A fact sheet on the Framework Accord issued by the U.S. State Department, and let's just stop right there, okay? You can pretty much bet that anything that has been issued on the Framework Accord by the United States State Department on this nuclear deal is anything but a fact sheet. It should probably be called the bullshit ledger. But anyway, the U.S. State Department claims that Iran would be required to grant the UN nuclear agency access to any quote-unquote suspicious sites. Iran has questioned that and other language in this sheet. Iran has so far declined to release its own fact sheet about the framework deal, but has said it would welcome snap inspections of civilian sites. Western nations have long suspected Iran of secretly pursuing nuclear weapons. This is not a secret. Tehran says its nuclear program is entirely for peaceful purposes. This is also not a secret. We all know that they are after nuclear weapons and that what they're saying is bullshit. And quite frankly, it's quite disturbing that you don't know who to believe in this whole damn fracas. You got John Kerry and the team of capitulators, and you have Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who described Western claims about the nuclear program a myth, and also said that there would be no inspections and that Kerry and Obama are lying to us. He says Americans and Europeans and some apple polishers fabricated the myth of nuclear weapons to say that the Islamic Republic was a threat. No, he says, America itself is the threat, he told military commanders on Sunday. Khamenei's remarks are seen as an effort by Iran to toughen its position ahead of the next round of talks. So, Iran's got its own issues going on with most of the world, and Iraq's in complete disarray. Yemen is in complete disarray. Libya is in complete disarray. ISIS just carried a bunch of new video down where they took more Christians to the sea and slaughtered them. They're storming into Ramadi, all but taking it over. And Obama is touting the Middle East as an example of his policy. Lord, I'd hate to see you fuck up, Barack. Okay, now, back home. We need to get on the Second Amendment front here. And before we get started on that, I am going to tell, I'm not going to tell, I'm going to ask Mr. Producer to take us into a commercial break and give me just a minute to shore this all up for you. We're going to come back. We're going to wrap this up. We're getting into the home stretch, 30 minutes until Bunny time. Right now, you're with DeGrouch, you get DeBunny, and then you get DeWilkins. And we'll be back in just a minute to take you there.
Oh, but ain't that America? You and me, ain't that America? Something to see, baby, ain't that America? Home of the free, yeah.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level, or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
whatever they need to continue their fight for independence at no cost for life. So many of them need us, and it's time for a grateful nation to step up. Find out how you can do your part at findwwp.org.
If you like your health care plan, you'll be able to keep your health care plan. This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you've got a business, you didn't build that.
The feeling most people get when they hear Barack Obama's speech, I felt this thrill going up my leg. I don't have that too often.
Steady.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. Ricky Robinson, host of America Off the Rails, will tackle the important issues facing America today as he tries to keep America from coming off the track. Get ready to hear the truth every Monday through Friday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, and on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Eastern and 11 Central here on K98Talk.com and the Spark Radio Network.
Welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy.
Hey, it's Cliff Davis from KLCI FM, the best radio station in the world. Coming soon. Stay tuned.
Oh, but ain't that America? You and me. Ain't that America? Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home of the free, yeah.
Welcome back. Let's slide it home in style here. We got a little 2A discussion we got to have. Chuck Grassley, who's a solid conservative. He ain't Superman, but he's no backbencher either. He's a Republican from Iowa, has sent a letter to Attorney General Eric Holder expressing some deep concerns over Veterans Affairs evaluations classifying veterans as, quote, mentally defective and banning them in the federal background check system from purchasing or owning a firearm. According to Grassley's office, the VA reports individuals to the gun ban list if an individual merely needs financial assistance managing VA benefits, keeping them from exercising their Second Amendment rights. The National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS, is effectively a national gun ban list, and placement on the list precludes the ownership and possession of firearms. So according to the Congressional Research Service, as of June 1st, 2012, 99.3% of all names reported to the NICS list, mental defective category, were provided by the Veterans Administration, even though reporting requirements apply to all federal agencies. Let that sink in. And that percentage remained virtually unchanged as of April 2013. Given the numbers, it's essential to ensure that the process by which the VA reports names to the Department of Justice for placement on the NICS list recognizes and protects the fundamental nature of veterans' rights under the Second Amendment, Grassley wrote in the letter. Specifically, once the VA determines that a veteran requires a fiduciary to administer benefit payments, the VA reports that veteran to the gun ban list, consequently denying his or her right to possess and own firearms. In the past, the VA has attempted to justify its actions by relying on a single federal regulation, 38 CFR 3.353, which by its plain language grants limited authority to determine incompetence, but only in the case of financial matters. Ratings agencies have sole authority to make official determinations of competency and incompetency for purposes of insurance and disbursement of benefits. End of story. The VA is placing veterans on the gun ban list without proper legal backing and is certainly engaged in overreach in this practice. On top of serious concerns about the infringement of Second Amendment rights, Grassley is raising questions about the lack of due process for veterans classified as mentally defective and therefore unfit to purchase a firearm who simply need help managing VA benefits. The VA's regulation appears to omit important findings and never reaches the question of whether a veteran is a danger to himself, herself, or others. Thus, a VA determination that a veteran is incompetent to manage finances is insufficient to conclude that the veteran is mentally defective under the ATF standard that is codified in federal law. Furthermore, when a veteran receives a letter, VA believes he is unable to manage his finances, that veteran now has the burden of proving that he is in fact competent to manage his benefit payments and does not. The hearing is a real possibility that the right to firearms will be infringed. Therefore, in light of the liberty and property interests involved, placing the burden of proof on the veteran is highly suspect. Under similar circumstances, the burden is generally on the government. Further, the hearing that takes place inside the VA administrative system and composed of VA employees rather than a neutral decision maker. Under the current practice of VA finding that concludes that a veteran requires a fiduciary to administer the payment benefits effectively voids his Second Amendment rights, a consequence which is wholly unrelated to and unsupported by the record developed in the VA process. Accordingly, Congress needs to understand what justifies taking such action without more due process protections for the veteran. Grassley has asked Holder to respond to the following questions by April 30th, 2015. Numero uno. Is the primary purpose of the NICS list to preclude firearm ownership and possession by individuals who are a danger to themselves and or others? If not, what is the primary purpose of the NICS list? Number two. Is the primary purpose of the VA's reporting system to report the names of individuals who are appointed a fiduciary? Number three, out of all names on the NICS list, what percentage of them have been referred by the VA? Yeah, we kind of know that answer. Number four, do you believe that a veteran adjudicated as incompetent to manage finances and appointed a fiduciary is likewise mentally defective under the ATF standard? If so, what is the basis for that conclusion? Now that one I like, Chuck. Number five, does the standard employed by the Veterans Administration to report names to the DOJ for subsequent placement on the NICS list comply with the protections of the Second Amendment? If so, please explain how in light of due process concerns described above. I like that one too, Chuck. 6. Given that the VA adjudication process can result in a complete infringement of a person's fundamental Second Amendment right, do you believe that the use of the clear and convincing evidentiary standard is proper? If so, why? Then he wants to know if the DOJ satisfied that all the names reported from the VA for placement on the NICS list are, in fact, in law, persons who should not own or possess a firearm because they are dangerous to themselves or others. If so, what evidence supports that conclusion? Given that 99.3% of the names in the NICS mental defective category are reported from the VA, has the DOJ reviewed the VA's reporting standards and procedure? If so, please provide a copy of the review that took place. If no review took place, please explain why. Number 9, what review process does DOJ have in place to ensure that names are properly on the NICS list? Number 10, how many individuals have appealed their placement on the NICS list? and how many individuals were successful in their appeal. Number 11, in light of the fact that the Supreme Court has held the Second Amendment to be a fundamental right, has the DOJ changed any processes or procedures relating to the NICS system which were in existence prior to that holding? And lastly, Grassley wants to know, besides the VA, what other federal agencies have reported names to the NICS list since 2005, and how many names were reported by each agency since 2005? Now, Grassley's getting after it here. He's basically putting the Veterans Administration and Obama's anti-gun, gun-grabbing cohorts on the spot. We know what's going on here. They want to take guns away from veterans because they know that veterans know how to use the guns better than most people. And who do you want to get weapons away from? Anybody you can, of course. So why not stretch anything you can to make it? Senator Grassley, I wish you excellent luck with this. And I hope that you don't stop digging until you get what we really need, which is a true resolution to this, which is becoming a huge problem for veterans. Now, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back overseas. We have a little more time than I thought we would have, so we're going into the treasure chest here. So this past Saturday, our friends in Iran who are so peaceful and only want nuclear energy, not nuclear weapons, they marked Army Day with a military parade featuring new weapons systems, as well as a truck carrying a massive banner reading "Death to Israel." A televised broadcast of the parade was punctuated by repeated chants of "Death to America" and "Death to Israel" by the crowds as the vehicles passed by. The announcer on Iranian television said during the broadcast, as trucks carrying armored personnel carriers rolled past the missile trucks, the announcer said, "If Israel makes a mistake, Tel Aviv and Haifa will not sleep at night, not one person." This was broadcast on national television. Military brass and political leaders, and foremost President Hassan Rouhani, attended the procession south of the capital, Tehran, which showcased the country's military technologies. Among the weapons systems paraded past dignitaries was a domestically produced version of the Russian S-300 anti-aircraft missile system, the Bavar 373. Speaking at the event, President Rouhani said Iran was adapting, quote, "a strategy of deterrence in order to prepare for peace and security in Iran and the Middle East. Our method of action is defense and not offense," he said. Now, this goes hand in hand with the announcement last week that Russia was going to supply its S-300 missile system to Iran soon, having delayed delivery for several years due to the sanctions. The announcement prompted bitter protests from Israel, with Netanyahu telephoning Vladimir Putin in vain to ask him to cancel the deal. Of course, Putin said no. Why did Putin say no? We still don't know, because this is a sick, sick deal where Russia, who can't sell their oil and is sitting on stockpiles of it, is going to be purchasing 500,000 barrels of oil a day from Iran. And until we find out why and what the hell all this is about, I trust nobody over there, not one damn person. So on Friday, our president, Barack Obama, said that he was surprised the Russians held back on going through with the S-300 deal with Iran for as long as they had. And also, pardon me, also, during this military parade, Rouhani harshly criticized Saudi Arabia, warning that the Saudi royal family in Riyadh will harvest the hatred that it is sowing in Yemen through its airstrike campaign. Since March 26, the Saudi-led coalition has been attacking Shiite rebels known as Houthis and allied fighters loyal to Yemen's ousted president Ali Abdullah Saleh. Iran supports the rebels but denies providing any military support. What does bombing the innocent Yemeni people mean? What goals are you pursuing? Will killing children bring power to you? You planted the seeds of hatred in this region, and you will see the response sooner or later, Rouhani said. Don't bomb children and elderly men and women in Yemen. You know, Iran's supreme leader, Khamenei, has already called the Saudi-led airstrikes in Yemen genocide and a major crime. This is hilarious coming from this jackass. Iran has presented a 4-point plan to end the conflict that includes humanitarian aid, dialogue, and the formation of a broad-based Yemeni unity government. That means filled with Iranians or Iranian influence. After a proposed ceasefire was already rejected by Saudi Arabia. Rouhani also accused Saudi Arabia of providing weapons and funding to terrorist groups in the Middle East. Oh my, pot, meat, kettle. What does providing financial assistance and weapons to terrorists in Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq mean, he asked. Iran is supporting both Syrian President Bashar Assad and the Iraqi government in its fight against Sunni Muslim extremists, including the Islamic State group. Tehran says Saudi Arabia and several other Middle East governments support the Islamic State group. Prominent lawmaker Aladdin Bourajedi, who heads the Parliamentary National Security and Foreign Policy Committee, predicted that Saudi Arabia will find itself trapped in the Yemeni quagmire. We are so sorry that today Saudi Arabia and its allies have placed themselves in a quagmire, and leaving it will definitely not be an easy task, he said. Whew! And I can't believe we made it through all 35 pages of stuff I had typed up. This is unreal. We are a little early, so let me take another minute to remind you, if you're listening now, to check out my friend on Facebook, and I'm trying to find what I did with the paper. What did I do with the stinking paper? There's the paper. The man who went out of his way to be kind to me in my time of need, literally the trailer breaking off the back of my truck and dropping in the road. This man pulled over, helped me pull the trailer out of the road, helped me get it reconnected, gave me the piece I needed to reconnect it, and asked me if I would just help him spread the word about New Vision Ranch. And you can find him on Facebook, New Vision Ranch on Facebook. This man's name is Barry Childress, and what he's looking to do with the New Vision Ranch is he wants to turn this 75 acres into a complex that will offer a high school rodeo program with an ultimate goal of hosting jackpot rodeos and getting these kids to college on rodeo scholarships. They want to do boarding and training for 4-H and Future Farmers of America cattle. They want to do horseback riding for the physically and emotionally handicapped. They want to teach life management classes to 13 to 19-year-olds to teach these kids simple tasks like how to add and subtract and how to keep it in a checkbook and how to manage money and how to do the things that adults do in this world on a very simplistic, basic level. They want to have horseback riding. They want a safe haven for runaways. And this man is, he's a man of faith, and he's put his trust in God that there's going to be investment to come into this project. But for right now, you can find him on Facebook at New Vision Ranch. Even if you can't help monetarily, stop by and drop Barry a word of support to let him know that you're thinking about what he's trying to do. This man is trying to reach. He doesn't want welfare. He doesn't want a handout. He wants to give these kids a hand up. He wants to help them make it in life and give them that shot. So take a minute and go do this thing. He's a very decent and kind man who helped me when he could have just rolled his window down and flipped his middle finger at me, but he pulled over and he helped me out. And I thank you, Barry. I know you're not listening, but I'm going to thank you anyway. And I'm going to tell people about you, and I'm going to do it more than once. And hopefully we can get some word spread and get some investors to you. And with that, folks, we're gearing up. It's almost bunny time on K98. Sam's going to be rocking the house, I'm sure, like usual. And then you get DeWilkins after Sam. And for me, I'm going to go get some dinner and then get tuned back in, because you never know what Sam's going to do, and I just got to find out. So Rick, Sam, Jason, Daniel, Angie, everybody in Politainment, Monday was a great night. You should have been listening if you weren't. I swear to God, I'll put my foot in your butt if I find out you weren't listening to Politainment on Monday night too. You get the second half of Politainment tonight. And I'm about to sign off and let you have it. So, Mr. Producer, take us away, and I will see everybody next Wednesday night, where I will be having the incredible Rod Eccles on the program during the first hour. I'm probably going to keep Rod for about 45 minutes. So definitely get your questions ready and be ready to call in and give us hell, because we're going to be giving it right back. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home of the free, yeah. Oh, but ain't that America? For you and me. Ain't that America? Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home of the free, yeah.
We will never fully understand what we've asked of our military service members or their families, asking them to put themselves in harm's way, to endure it all. But we do understand that it's our turn, our duty, to keep them secure for the rest of their lives. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs help our most severely ill or injured veterans live independently, at no cost, for life, so that they might stand at ease. Join us at findwwp.org.
You'll be able to keep your health care plan. This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
The feeling most people get when they hear Barack Obama's speech, I felt this thrill going up my leg. I don't have that too often.
Steady.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. Ricky Robinson, host of America Off the Rails, will tackle the important issues facing America today as he tries to keep America from coming off the track. Get ready to hear the truth every Monday through Friday starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, and on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Eastern and 11 Central here on K98Talk.com and the Spark Radio Network.